Ask Chuck.
Hello, Chuck. I used to teach. This comes from Brian Dracut, Brian F. from Dracut, Massachusetts. Maybe it's Dracut. I don't know. I don't know this town. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. My apologies if I did not. And he asked this, hi, Chuck. I used to teach AP government and politics, and my class would watch MTP every Sunday, and we would devote Monday's class to discussing the topics. Always appreciated your insider analysis and love to have the chance to listen to you without the restrictions of a 60-minute show, actually 44 minutes. I just read a book called Lucky Loser, in which the authors, journalists for the New York Times, exposed Trump's illusion of success. I was floored by how much of his life has been built on lies, scams, and wonder how so many people have been duped by him. Will there ever be a Toto who will pull away the curtain? You know, you get at something, Brian, that I think was the greatest disconnect of the 2016 election. And, you know, when people talk about, did we properly, when I say we, the collective we, did the media properly vet Trump? And there was always this aspect of Trump where I think we all assumed everybody knew the story. This was a fairly famous people, you know, don't you know he bankrupted 3 casinos? Don't you know he did this? And all of his businesses were failures. And there were certainly plenty of stories done about how had they simply let his inheritance just accumulate interest and dividends in the stock market, that he'd have more money today than he did when he used his inheritance to try his hand at real estate development. And it has always been, you know, it's all been smoke and mirrors with him, right? Atlantic City was smoke and mirrors. Trump Airlines was smoke and mirrors. You know, The Apprentice, he always found other people to finance his investments and stuff. Now, he's not alone in doing this. And, you know, I did the first interview I did with him. One of the pre-interview transcripts that I became obsessed with was an interview he gave in 1990 to Playboy magazine. It was for a reporter writing for Playboy, obviously, freelance reporter. But it was a fascinating interview because it was as revealing as Trump ever was about sort of what was sort of referred to as the Trump show. This is in 1990, before there's an Apprentice, right? Before there's any of this stuff, right? And I remember, you know, I even repeated when I said, you know, the reporter asked you, I went to Trump, I said, the reporter asked you about, you know, the yacht, the planes, the girls, what is all this? And he called it props for this was in the 90 interview, props for the show. And in the interview, Trump's answer was, and it's been sold out every day. And I said, props for the show. And he goes, yeah. And I said, and I remember asking him, you've been compared to P.T. Barnum. Do you take that as a compliment? He said, I do. And I thought that was as revealing of a moment as you could have had with him, right? Speaking of revealing moments, I do believe that, you know, there's always a picture's worth 1,000 words, and sometimes video's worth 1,000,000. If you just needed one video to explain Donald Trump's presidency, what it likely was like, what was it like to work for Donald Trump, and what kind of person is Donald Trump? The video of the staffer dropping the golf ball and supposedly searching for the golf ball and then dropping it to make it easy for the president to find. I don't think you need anything else. I think it is one of those, need you say more? What else do you need to know about him? And I remember, actually, of all people, it was Rush Limbaugh who once said, by the way, that, you know, golf will tell you more about a person's character than anything, right? Because you score yourself. It's all the honor system. Did you find your ball? Oh, yeah, I found my ball. Did you or did you not, right? It's all self-reporting. That's why we're always impressed when a golfer penalizes themselves. No one saw it. But of course, with cameras today, there's always a chance somebody saw it. And so you find out who wants to be seen as honest before being caught and who wants to only be honest after getting caught, right? And golf is one of those, very much reveals who you really are, right? Essentially, are you willing to cut corners? Are you somebody that has a foot wedge? I always say, ironically, it was Rush Limbaugh. Because look, I mean, there's stories of Bill Clinton was a cheater at golf, supposedly, right? You'd hear these stories. So it's I think it's an incredibly revealing moment. But to go back to the basis of your question, when I think about all these, I don't think we realized that the country needed more of an education on his business background. I think there was this weird assumption. First, when he first got in, there wasn't the typical coverage you get of who is Donald Trump? Do you really know Donald Trump? Because nobody took the candidacy seriously. It felt like a publicity stunt. Because most of what Donald Trump's done his whole life is a publicity stunt. And in fact, to those of us that have had to cover Donald Trump off and on, he was viewed as that person. Oh God. I mean, in 2011, when he was floating the idea of running for president, it felt like we were all being used for just a publicity stunt for him to try to get NBC to pony up more money to renew The Apprentice. I remember getting a call one time, just sort of, putting him on speaker and on mute and go, I can't believe this guy is spending, what does he have to do all day sitting here yelling at myself and Savannah Guthrie for 30 minutes about why we should take him more seriously as a presidential candidate. Now, obviously, in hindsight, yeah, we should have, but what we should have taken seriously was not Trump, but it was the appeal of Donald Trump, right? That's been, to me, that's disconnect number one. But disconnect number two is we made too many assumptions that what we kind of knew Trump was sort of this, I don't know what you want to call him, P.T. Barnum phony. And we just assumed everybody else did too. And I think that if we had treated him as if he were Donald Smith, a self-proclaimed billionaire that people don't know a lot about, and you sort of were uncovering, here's how this deal really worked, and here's how this deal really worked. Perhaps voters see this version of him. Perhaps you don't need to pray for Toto to come in. But there's also a part of me that thinks that this is something that maybe not that it will be like the Wizard of Oz. It'll be the end of the story when people finally all figure it out. But I often wonder if we collectively had sort of treated him as a candidate that we didn't assume everybody knew, that we had dug into his background as if we assumed the voters didn't know him. Maybe some of these stories hit differently, hit sooner. But hindsight, right? What do they say? 2020.